Welcome, Hoshamdeep and Hosh Galdanis. Today we are going to discuss a topic from the history of English literature, and that is from the Victorian age. Yes, today we are going to discuss Victorian novel and novelists. I think today we will only focus on the traits of Victorian novel, the characteristics and themes of Victorian novel, and in the second part of this video I'll discuss with you the major and prominent novelists of the Victorian era. So let's start our discussion. Here is a brief description of the contents we are going to discuss in this topic, means in Victorian novel and novelists. In this topic, Victorian novel and novelist, we are going to discuss first of all the introduction, means the genre of novel in Victorian era, the realistic novel, which was a type of novel that was rapidly emerged and flourished during the Victorian era, and it reached to its climax during the modern age, even in early modern age. So my today's focus is on novel in Victorian era, the realistic novel, features and themes of Victorian novel. The next part 2, that is based on the important novels and novelists of Victorian era. We will discuss this in the second part of the video. Today we are going to discuss the three things that are the part of our first session. So let's start the introduction of Victorian novel. Victorian age is known as the age of fiction and novel, although poetry also got a flourishment, and it established as is a prominent and representative genre of Victorian age. But this is basically the age of fiction and novel as well as prose. It is the age of prose and novel as compared to the age of poetry, because the previous age, romantic age, was the age of poetry, but this age, Victorian era, is known as the age of novel and fiction. Novel has got a rapid progress during the age. This is basically the reason of novel becoming a representative genre of this age. It wasn't only in terms of the production of the novel, but also in terms of the versatilities of themes as well. Here, I mean to say that novel got popularity because of the versatility of its themes. Secondly, also in terms of production, because a lot of people were trying to write novel on that time, and mostly they belong to the middle classes. So these are the reasons that work behind the popularity of the novel during the Victorian era. So novel has passed through many phases before this and even during the Victorian age. In Victorian age, it has reached to its climax in terms of themes and productions, means the number of productions of the novel. It has got a natural tendency towards realism, and this is another reason for getting popularity. I mean, it's another reason. Realism was emerged basically on that time in novel, and this was the reason behind the genre of novel getting popularity during the Victorian era. So it was produced in large number, and secondly, it was dealing with the real life themes. Hence, it has a tendency towards realism. So these are the reasons behind the novel becoming the popular genre of the time, means of the Victorian era. Novel has got empowerment, just like its themes dealing with the lives of middle class. The next reason is behind the popularity of novel during the Victorian age is it's dealing with the lives of middle class. Hence, Victorian age is the age of the rise of middle class. Yes, as we all know that Victorian age is known as the age of the rise of middle class, and this very thing is depicted in the Victorian novels. So this is another reason behind the popularity of novel during the Victorian age, that it was dealing with the lives of middle class. Due to the increasing trends of freedom and liberty among the people, novel flourished, because a lot of people were trying to write novel, and they were discussing their troubles and the conflicts of the society with the help of the novel. And this way novel had just worked as a tool of communication between the people and from the people towards uh, the power hierarchy. So the novel was used as a tool to reflect the social issues and conflicts of the Victorian era. So this increasing trend towards freedom and liberty was also a reason behind the novel getting popularity as a dominant genre of the time. The genre novel flourished at the hands of the writers belong to all the classes of the society. This is another reason behind the significance of novel in the Victorian age, because it wasn't only in the hands of the literary people and the people having feather in their caps. It was flourished at the hands of the writers who belong to different classes of the society, prominently from the middle class. They belong to the most of the Victorian novelists, they belong to the middle class. So they also belong to the high classes and to the aristocratic classes even, but most of the Victorian novelists, they belong to the middle class, and that is another reason behind the popularity of novel during the Victorian age. There were a few other factors behind the popularity of novel and the novel rapidly getting progress in Victorian age. Some of the other trends and reasons were that reading was a common trend on that time. Reading was common with the passage of time, with the advancement of education, and with the advancement of liberty. The reading was in trend, and the libraries were in access of common men. So this was another reason of novel getting popularity in Victorian age. Novel reading was in common due to its real depiction of life. Novel was reflecting the real life on that time. It was dealing with the issues of real life. It was reflecting the characters from real life. That was another reason of the popularity of a novel during the Victorian age. Novel reading was in common due to its real depiction of life. This is what that reflects in the realistic novel. Realistic novel was the genre that was emerged during the Victorian age, and we will also discuss the primary features of the realistic novel. Before discussing the early Victorian novelists, it is necessary to discuss realism and realistic novel first. So let's discuss the realistic novel. Realistic novel is different than the novel of romantic era, because we all know that romantic era was preoccupied with the notion of preferring emotions and imaginations over reason. So realistic novel was different than that. It was full of questions, and it was full of the real life depictions. So it was different than romantic era. The realistic novel of Victorian age or Victorian era has changed the significance of the genre of poetry. It has just replaced poetry in terms of its popularity. Before this, in romantic age, poetry was popular, but in the later age, in Victorian age, particularly in the early Victorian age, the novel got rapid popularity and progress because of realism, because of the emerging realism in its themes and its notions and and in its plots. Novel emerged as a popular genre of real life reflection, as it has used the journalistic techniques to win the interest of masses. Means it collects and conveys the information from the common man's life. This is actually a very tempting thing. Even nowadays, we like the dramas and novels that are representing a picture of real life. So this was the reason behind the popularity of the novel during the Victorian age. The realistic novel, actually, it was emerged as a genre of real life reflection, and that's how it used a journalistic technique to win the interest of masses. It was a source of infotainment for the people of Victorian time. That's why the realistic novel was in. The realistic novel aimed to represent the struggle of common man as its major theme. So, why it was in fashion in practice? Because it was representing the struggle of common man uh, on that time, and mostly on the struggle of lower class. So the dominant themes of the Victorian novel, they are based on the struggle of common men, and particularly the struggle of the lower classes, the lower sects of the society, the lower sides of the society. Literature hence was taking a turn from stereotypical representations towards the real life depictions, towards the depiction of the real life conflict. So it was a transitional period in the history of novel as a genre in English literature. Victorian novel was more than a fictive genre. Well, it was a new thing for novel on that time. It was the tool. Novel means novel as a genre. It was used as a tool to question the burning issues of the English society of the time during the Victorian era. So Victorian novel was emerged first as a genre, then it started dealing with the issues of real life, and it started depicting the life of middle classes and lower classes, and that's how it had got popularity among the masses and people, and hence it emerged as a genre that was becoming a tool to question the norms and issues of the English society of the time. Let's come towards the features and themes of Victorian novels. Victorian novels had given significance to characters as compared to action. Before this, in the earlier phases of the literature, even in Renaissance, we find action in focus. But in the Victorian, and then even in the later time period, means in the modern time period, the character was the focus. So Victorian novel had given significance to characters as compared to action. So the thought and character were important for the Victorian novels as compared to the action. Um, from this trait, we can say that Victorian novel, it seemed inspired over the neoclassical notions. In early Victorian novels, they had loose plot settings, they were formless. So earlier Victorian novels, they had loose plot settings and they were formless, because on that time novel was dealt as something like art. Artistically, it was dealt artistically, but later on with gradually it had got a transition. It started becoming a tool of social criticism. So earlier it was for the sake of entertainment, later it turned into social criticism, and then at the end towards the realistic picture of the society. So novel had to go through many phases even during the Victorian era. First it was formless, it was just like a piece of art, and later it was written for the sake of entertainment. Then it had got a transition because it turned into social criticism, and then eventually it became the picture of the realistic depiction, means it became the realistic depiction of the society, a realistic picture of the society. A few other Victorian novel themes are industrialism and the issues that were that emerged in result of the emerging industrialism, the class conflict, emerging capitalism, utilitarianism, struggle of existence, and survival of the fittest. They were the common themes of the Victorian novels. And then the emerging intellectuality in the novels of Meredith, Dickens, and Hardy. They were all the part of the Victorian novels. The major features of the Victorian novels were that, and every action has its consequence. This was the motto behind the writing of the Victorian novel. So this was the roadmap of a Victorian novel, that they tried to convey that every action has its consequences. It emphasizes on the value of present, on the value of now. Then it focuses on the catastrophe of lower class that was in the result of the rapid progress of in the industrialism, and then in utilitarianism the society was turning into a utilitarian society, and that was causing the suffering of the real sufferings of the lower classes, the lower stratas of the society. They were suffering, and this was depicted in the Victorian novel. Then the simplicity of language and expression is another feature of the Victorian novel. They employ the simple actions to communicate the meanings of life in real, and they focus on character rather than action. So characters, the Victorian novels and their characters, they are normally taken from the normal lives. So these are the major features and the themes of Victorian novel, as well as of the realistic novel. Our next topic will be based on a discussion on the major novelists and their works in the Victorian age. So this is part 2, but I think we will have a separate session for this topic. Thank you so much for today. See you in the next video with part 2 of the same discussion. Allah Hafiz.